Going to open up council time for Wednesday, January the 20th. And under old business, approve the minutes of the last meeting, January 13th meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. No new business, it looks like. Councilor reports, please.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Councilor Baumann.
I would like to report just a bit on House Bill 1152, which has come to be known already as the health restructure legislation. The reason for reporting out is a couple of questions from the community on our line asking if this is a, quote, done deal already, and the answer is no, it's not. And secondly, because this was discussed at our Monday weekly legislative briefing, and I think all of the councilors were not able to attend that particular one. So this is a governor requested regional public health restructure legislation. And the proposal is actually split into two bills. One is a funding bill, and the other one is a restructure bill. So the restructure bill is House Bill 1152, which requires by January 1st of 2023, so this is still 2 years off, that counties would form comprehensive public health districts as determined by the work group, which would mean that Clark would be combined with other counties for this district. And then members of the district boards of health would include one commissioner from each county, and then various elected officials from the cities and a practicing nurse and so on. And then there would be a district advisory committee for that group as well. And then there is a funding bill, Senate Bill 5149, that goes with this, which requires the insurance commissioner to assess health carriers and Medicaid managed care organizations and third-party administrators in order to have funds on deposit for this restructure. So this is something that perhaps the county council will be taking a position on in the future. We'll see.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll hear more as we go through this legislative session, and maybe when we actually have an opportunity also to meet with our delegation and voice our opinion on that.
Chair O'Brien, if I may, this is Lindsay Schaefer. That actually is on my list. I have a handful of bills that I need to get the council's input on today. So I don't know if you want to pause now and discuss whether or not the council wants to take an opinion on that after Councilor Bowerman's summary. Otherwise, excuse me, it will be coming up in my policy issues here in a moment.
Okay, why don't we just wait till your policy issues and we'll go over each one of them. But so thank you. That'll be good that we have this discussion. Are there other council reports? Otherwise, I don't think we've had many committees meeting yet. Soon we will. Although we did have CTRAN, isn't that right, Temple? Because you were elected vice chair of that. So
I reported on that after that meeting.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're moving on to work session requests then.
So the first one, and I don't know if Councilor Medvedev wants to jump in on this one. It was a request from the Department of Ecology to come and speak about their some of their work that they're doing across the county and a new program that they're initiating that they're calling Poop Smart Clark. So this would just be an informative work session to give you an idea of ecology's work in the county.
What is the council's, Councilman?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit more to it. In my conversation with our regional representative from State Ecology, we were focused on the projects they were doing on the East Fork of the Lewis and getting ready to focus on a new project. And I was advocating for our Lacamas watershed, which she was very in favor of. Some of those long-term impacts that we see in the salmonid recovery efforts in our streams and rivers have to do with agricultural impacts as well as human impacts that can be mitigated. And so this program is getting rolled out. It's an educational program. It's a help program. It is not an enforcement or punitive program. So it is to help small farmers, agricultural uses, particularly just to educate on the best practices for managing their manure. So it's a statewide issue. It's a country issue. It's an effort that I think is laudable. Again, it is to help, not hurt any small farmer, anyone that may have to manage these issues. There are small farm loans. There are other grants if there are mitigation efforts that need to be done. But they would very much like, one, to give it some publicity, but two, to brief us on it as it may impact other work that we do. We certainly have a lot of efforts going on right now with the health department on Whipple Creek, on doing DNA research on effluent that may have gotten into that creek. So it's a widespread initiative, and I think it would be worthy of at least half an hour for them to do a presentation to us.
Is there a willingness for the council to go ahead with that? I think learning more is always good, so I'd be in favor of that. Any no's?
I'm supportive of hearing more.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any no's, so let's go ahead and set that up. And Gary, do you actually think 30 minutes will be sufficient?
Well, what they were asking for is any amount of time that we could give them. So I think that coordination with the ecology representative can nail down a time from 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay, and I'm wondering, will we ask any of our staff to also be here or not? You think that's a good idea? Gary?
We can certainly invite those who work directly with this type of resources in the county as a learning opportunity for them as well. But as Councilor Mevaji noted, that Department of Ecology actually asked for this request so that they can present what the water quality issues that they're working on in the county, as well as the new pollution identification as well. But we can certainly invite our staff members there as a learning opportunity for them as well.
And so I would add to that, Madam Chair. So, we have someone at Heritage Farms, small farms bureau there. I mean, they would be interested people because they work hand in hand, and they may also have money and also further support along these lines. So I think that it would be handy to have people invited at least to listen in.
It will be recorded, so that could be something too that would be available. We can make that available, or advertise that, post this, that we're going to be doing this. So, okay, the next request is for Buildable Lands Project Advisory Committee recommendations. I saw Oliver was on. Or Lindsay, or who's presenting on this one?
I will open it up, councillors, and turn it over to Jose and Bob Poole. Our GIS manager is also online. Councillors, as you know, Clark County is one of the required counties to submit buildable lands report to the state under section RCW 3678-215. That required the largest I-5 corridor counties to prepare the buildable lands report and submit it to the state. In 2017, Macomb County was added, and the legislature updated to 17 through Senate Bill 5254, requiring some other component to be addressed as we update our next, as we prepare for our next buildable lands report. So with grant from the state, we did hire, with the permission of the council, a consultant to assist us with the effort. We have been using traditionally since 1994, the vacant buildable lands model that we have been using to estimate what is vacant, what is underutilized, and other categories to determine what is buildable within the urban growth boundary. And the council did appoint advisory committee that we have been working with for almost a year and a half now. And Jose Alvarez and Bob Poole are the primary staff. So I will turn it over to Jose. We are asking for about 1.5 hours to present the recommendation of that group to you. So Jose, if you have any details to go, present it to the council and just give them heads up on what to expect. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Oliver. Good morning, council. This is the culmination of 8 meetings that we've had with the Buildable Lands Project Advisory Committee, where we were looking at some updates to the vacant buildable lands model. The committee, like I said, met 8 times. There were some consensus on items to move forward for council's recommendation. There were a couple of sticking points where we didn't have a recommendation. So we're going to present that information to council at the work session, give you an overview of those items. The idea is to come back to you at a council time to get some direction, and then have a public hearing subsequent to that to sort of finalize those changes that would go into the vacant buildable lands model. When that's finalized and completed, we can run the model and complete the buildable lands report.
Okay, so that sounds good, especially if you're going to present something. As Oliver was saying, there's a model that's been used since 1994, and I know since my time on the council, since 2017, I have heard grumbling about that particular model and that it doesn't really work well, or is not right working as some developers and builders believe that it should. So I'm hoping that there will be a remedy to that'll come forward.
Let's see, there's going to be, we had a pretty robust discussion about the concerns different factions and groups have. We're also, we spent a lot of time on some of the assumptions that go around the infrastructure deductions, and there's just some recognition of differences in methodology that were addressed towards the end of the meeting. So the consultant will have some sort of recommendations given what we found out sort of towards the end that should hopefully satisfy those sort of outstanding issues that are sort of connected and get a little conflated. So hopefully we can address that in a way that's clear enough that makes sense to you, so that going forward we have a good recommendation. There were also a lot of issues with the model, not some of the assumptions were, for example, the city of Vancouver, a lot of development was happening in commercial areas where the model assumed no growth, but that's where they've achieved a lot of their growth in the downtown area. So part of the updates to the model was just sort of to recognize some of the things that the model wasn't capturing, and just refinements to improve it, you know, being consistent with the guidelines that were updated from the Department of Commerce, and really in an effort to sort of show our work and be transparent about what's in there and how we make the estimates that we do.
Okay, thank you. Are there, I mean, we do need to have this. I'm assuming that an hour and a half will be sufficient to be able to present it, but I do think we probably will need that time. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing that we wanted to potentially have a one-on-one with Councilor Bowerman, since you're coming at this not knowing anything about the model. I think last year or the year before, we did set up one-on-ones with Councilor Lentz and Medveji to give them sort of an overview of the model, so you're not completely unaware of how that model works. And Bob Poole and I were able to do that.
I will appreciate that.
Yeah,
And
no problem.
Madam Chair, if I could throw in somewhat of a different view of this as well. You know, so Oliver and Jose, who I hardly recognize with this rugged outdoors look going on here. You know, I so deeply respect your professionalism and your depth of knowledge. And the frustration for me, it's kind of the same that I sense in some of our litigation, which I'm not going to go into, but, you know, you hear one side out in the public domain, and then you hear the other side, and it's so hard to know what the truth is because we don't have everyone in the same room at the same time asking questions and hearing answers. And we used to have a lot better opportunity for that in our public hearings, where we could directly respond to some of the constituent comments. I mean, as a former judge, I would sit there and I'd listen to the advocates, hear evidence, and then you could pose questions and you could really get to the heart of a disagreement or a lack of understanding. And so this is one area that we've certainly all received a lot of communication from out in the public in different issues surrounding the buildable lands model. And some of those I've sent to you and asked you to answer the constituent. And I know that many of those issues have been addressed in some of the Zoom meetings that you've had, but we're still kind of left out of the mix. You know, we don't have that direct interaction. So I look forward to this presentation to learn more. I learn so much more each time you speak with me. But I'm wondering, is there some way that we can kind of get to the heart of some of these either miscommunications or allegations that our model isn't fulfilling the GMA role that it should, that the rural lands aren't being treated properly or fairly? I mean, I'd really like a focus on kind of getting to the heart of that. And also, if there's some way to allow those minority opinions or adverse opinions or differing opinions to be answered directly in front of us so we can more fully gauge what's going on with this model.
Okay, so that probably gives you some prep for what's going to be asked when you present this. So,
Okay.
yeah.
that's what I was going to, that would have been my response, that gives us opportunity to prep and be ready for the work session. And not only for the work session, as Jose indicated, there will be a hearing where you will also have additional opportunity to hear from the public. I'm hoping that whether it's through Zoom or whatever means, that the public will have opportunity to be able to address you on some of the issues, but this will give us an idea of how to prep for the work session as well. So thank you.
Okay. So without objection, we will schedule that Buildable Lands Advisory Committee. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add? Nope. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you when it's scheduled.
Thank you.
The desired date looks like it's February 24th. So hopefully that works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to the report on policy issues. Lindsay.
Good morning, everyone. So the first topic I have is the legislative bills, and as Councilor Bowerman said, I know we didn't have a quorum for the full meeting on Monday, and so wanting to see if the council wants to take a formal opinion on some of these bills. Of course, the option to not have an opinion is always an option, so you don't have to choose pro or con. We could choose to just monitor and continue to work. And that's, I will start with the House Bill 1152, which is the health districts. I will note that WASAC's opinion and most of the counties are taking that sort of, we're opposed to it as it is now, but we are eager to continue to work with the governor's office and with legislative staff as the bill moves forward. Because if in a legislative strategy, if you come out just completely opposing the bill, they often will not include you in the discussions as the bill moves forward. So the idea behind this is to say, we're opposed to it for a whole host of reasons. Here are the reasons why, but we understand the legislative interest in it, and are interested in continuing to be part of that conversation. So I will start with that if anybody has any questions on the bill, but Councilor Bowerman gave the excellent summary, and so I will just turn it over to the council.
Okay, are there comments of the council? I think Lindsay's definitely right that we should be open, and as she said, WASAC at this point is opposed by what they see. However, being open and giving, input. I'm wondering, Lindsay, do you know what our delegation, anybody in our delegation, has anybody signed on to that bill? Do you have any feel for what our delegation might be thinking?
So our delegation, I'm checking to see if anybody is a sponsor on that bill.
I can speak to this too, Lindsay.
I'm sorry, Representative
I can speak to
Stonier
this
is
too.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I said I can speak to this too.
So Representative Stonier is on the House version of the bill, and that's it in terms of our delegation sign-ons. But I think I'll turn it over to Councilor Lentz to talk about the rest.
Yes, it's being heard at the Healthcare Committee tomorrow morning, and both Representative Harris and Representative Stonier serve on that committee, and Stonier is a co-sponsor of this, but not one of the leads. And I spoke actually with Representative Stonier about it this morning. WASAC has pulled together a committee, and I told you about this actually at a previous meeting. But WASAC has pulled together a committee of elected officials from around the state, county officials from around the state, as well as public health officials, and to work on a response to this bill. And I'm a part of that committee, and also a number of us were asked to testify tomorrow morning on the behalf of WASAC. So I'll be a part of that. In speaking with Representative Stonier, she did sign on because she does feel that there are some changes that should occur with regard to public health, but she did not understand some of the facts surrounding the generation of the bill, which were that it was created largely without any contact with local health jurisdictions, or with no contact or asking for input from public health officials. And the consensus among public health officials and pretty much everybody involved with the counties is that this regionalization approach doesn't actually help us meet the needs of serving the public health needs of our community. Something for us to be sensitive to in our testimony and in our conversations around it is that by necessity, this is the execution bill for the funding bill that is a partner in the Senate. And the funding bill would actually provide a majority of the funding we've been asking for foundational public health services for the last number of years. And they kind of do have to go in partnership. So if we would like the funding, then providing constructive commentary to help make this 1152 bill a better bill would be crucial to helping both of these move forward. So that's something that I talked about a bit with Representative Stonier, and said that, you know, we in Clark County, I'm sure would be happy to help try to find ways to improve it, to provide constructive commentary to make it better. And that we from the Wasatch delegation will be expressing our concerns that this doesn't meet our needs, and hoping for continued conversation moving forward.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about that. The funding bill that is providing for public health, foundational public health, is a partner bill to this. Is that what I understand? So if
Yes, they're tied together.
If 51 doesn't pass, 52 doesn't pass?
I can't speak to the technicalities of that, but they reference each other. They're tied together.
So Lindsay, can
funding,
you speak to it?
policy.
Yeah, so when they do these sorts of things, typically that allows the policy bill to move forward. It allows the financial bill to have different deadlines. And so when you have a bill that has a fiscal impact, it has different deadlines in the legislature. So by doing them separately, it's just part of the budgetary process. So there have been legislative instances where the policy bill has passed, but the budgetary bill has not passed. That's usually because things fell apart at the last minute. That's rarely ever the intent. And so this is just allowing the two separate vehicles to run on two different deadlines, but the intent behind it is to have them both pass at the same time, or neither to pass. But in theory, it is possible to have one pass without the other. It has happened. And if the fiscal appropriation is not made, then the bill is usually null and void in the language.
So I would just warn that being lured by some funding mechanism into something we don't want, or that will not actually serve our constituents as well, is dangerous. So please be aware that when we accept money for, when we want we think we want something because it'll provide funding, it really can be detrimental in the long run. So I see how this is connected because obviously go ahead.
This allows for support of one without the other. And so, you know, certainly there would be times at which we might support or oppose a policy, but say, you know, we support the policy, but the funding mechanism is not what we think is the best option. So that's certainly a position that the council could take. I think at this point, just in terms of how it's being treated in the legislature, these are being treated as a package. And so it's not, I don't think it's appropriate in this situation to express one feeling about one bill as differently than the other. Sometimes in these situations that's appropriate, but I wouldn't recommend it in this situation. I think it's early. And so continuing to have that conversation, allowing Councillor Lentz to have those conversations with WASAC, allowing WASAC to and with SALFO to move forward with this and treat them as the package that they are, is probably the best course of action at this point. That doesn't mean that we can't take an opposing view or a stronger supporting view in the future. It just says right now we're hesitant, but we want to stay at the table.
And I didn't want my comments to be construed as supporting one or the other. I am just putting out there that when you are lured in by funding, sometimes you get tripped up. So I'm not suggesting anything except wisdom in decision making and what we support and what we don't support. And how is it, Councillor Lentz, that you got onto this committee?
They asked me to join it.
Who's they?
WASAC.
Okay, well, it'll be a new day because we do have somebody else representing and being on the legislative steering
It's
committee.
It's not the legislative steering committee. It's an ad hoc committee about this, and I was asked to join this committee.
Good, thanks.
I have a question for Lindsay that I'd just like to confirm something that I heard on Monday that I haven't seen elsewhere in writing, and that is that under this governor's structure, that Dr. Melnick, or public health directors, I guess I should say, would become state employees. Is that correct?
So under the proposed structure, all of these new public health districts would operate under the State Department of Health. And so, yes, vis-a-vis that, then if they worked for these health districts, then they would be state employees under the Department of Health.
Well, given that, speaking for myself, I'd like to see our council take a position that expresses great concern, or something stronger if you wish, picking up on Councillor Lentz's points that regionalism doesn't help us better meet the needs of our residents. But in addition, that we feel that it's important, or I feel that it's important, to have the County Board of Health remain administratively within the county. And thirdly, I find it of concern that given this combination of counties, that there is no comparable governmental structure. So that is not an appropriate kind of thing to do for needed oversight of what occurs within this, or by this group.
And I would, Temple, did you say that you're going to be testifying?
It's on WASAC's behalf.
On WASAC, but you are a Clark County councilor, and I think that we would have to go forward as a group to allow you to testify on behalf of us. That's the only reason you're in WASAC, is because you're a Clark County councilor. So what are you planning on testifying? What are you going to say?
Just to interject here, Councillor Lentz can speak in her individual capacity or her capacity as a spokesperson, a speaker for WASAC, without having the entire council approval.
So I just want to segue off of that. And so what Council Lentz has said so far, I really don't disagree with. I support. I have a keen interest in this. I've been pretty critical of how our Board of Health has been functioning, or not, for the past 6 months. So I think reform is needed. So I would just ask, if we're not going to approve your script as a council, that you make it clear that you're only speaking on your own behalf, or on behalf of whatever the association has approved, and not on behalf of us. I think this is an area that's just starting to enter into the mix, and as it kind of got dropped on even our health director by the governor's office without much background or input whatsoever. this is an important topic, and so certainly I wish our council would be, our views would be, one, informed, and two, agreed upon as on behalf of Clark County Council. So, and this is the first I've heard that you're testifying on behalf of the association. So anyway, I think I hear the chair's concerns and I share it, and I heard what Lindsay said, and that's fair. So if you're not going to allow us to weigh in on the script and approve it, then I would ask that you represent yourself, not as the council.
Well, since I've already said multiple times that I would be representing Wasac, I intend to represent Wasac as I was asked to do. Thanks for your concern. I'm not going to give you my script for approval, though, as I, again, already said, Wasac's position is not in favor of this bill in its current form, and that will be what I will be testifying to.
And Madam Chair, and given Lindsay's background, I would think that would be the council's position. Is that what I'm hearing, and what she's suggesting is that we're not in favor of this bill in its form, but that if we come outright and say we're not in favor of it at all, then we have no voice at the table. So I think the opportunity to maintain a place at the table to have conversations to make it better, given what we know the legislative makeup is, that's a better strategic move for us, is to just make sure we've got a seat at the table to have these conversations. So, and Wasac also represents us as well. So, and I'm a little just disturbed about your concern about Councillor Lentz and this conversation about her serving on this board or on this committee for Wasac. She has every right to do that. And
I didn't, excuse me, Councillor Olson, don't be concerned. I asked the question because just last, excuse me, because last week we decided who was going to serve on committees. That was why I asked the question. And it's usually the Legislative Steering Committee that is dealing with legislation and what the council, approves or disapproves. And I'm not suggesting that we disagree with it, go forward and just go and say we're against it. I'm not saying that at all. I would like to know, however, regardless of whether Councillor Lentz is representing herself, representing Wasac, or representing this council, I think we need to know what it is that she's intending on saying, so that we're aware that somebody who sits in a seat in Clark County is speaking before the legislature. I don't think they're going to get the difference. I honestly do not believe that they will see the difference between that. So that's my concern.
As a representative for Wasac, I think they're smart enough to know the difference.
Moving on. Lindsay, your next, the next thing.
So to clarify, the county's position is that we are going to not have a formal public opinion at this point, but I can convey to Josh that we have concerns with the existing bill and are interested in continuing to be part of the conversation.
Okay, what other policy issues?
Just a quick question. I'm unclear on why we're not taking a position on this one at this time. Is that correct, that we're not as a county council?
I think what I understand that is being stated here is that if we stand back and don't oppose it, we're in a better position of having the place at the table if the legislation does go forward. I think that our health director is not for it. That I know, or that I presume, I should say. And if it doesn't benefit our county, or if it does less, in some ways, I don't know why we wouldn't be against it, except for the fact that if it does pass, we must be able to have a say in, you know, how it is, what changes may take place.
Do you see any problem with saying what our concerns are so that they could for sure be on WASC's list? Although I think from our conversation on Monday, the points that I voiced anyway, I think are on their list, and maybe it's not a problem for us as a county council to reinforce that we concur with that.
I think the best thing to do is, for one thing, list the maybe unintended consequences for sure, and how it may affect us. That I see that as a very important point that we bring forward. That's why legislatures have hearings, so that they can hear all sides of it. So we have to, I think we should be bringing up the negative side, whether we're for, and not state whether we're for it, against it. But if it happens, this will be what will happen in Clark County. And so hopefully that would be a clear way of, you know, handling it.
Okay.
I take other input from counselors about that.
Well, I share what was just said. I have real concerns about this, just as our director has made clear he does as well. This is all emerging kind of at the spur of the moment, without that background lead up and input that normally would occur with proposals as wide overreaching as this one is. So I think as a council, we should express our concern, but I mean, it's too nascent to know which way it's going. And I think most of the issues I've seen on behalf of WESAC are the same issues we have, that, you know, the regional model is not what we're looking for. I mean, we need local input and control, and that's what we've been sorely lacking. And I would add, because it is kind of a teaching point, you know, it just came out with our initiative to organize our own vaccination program. Out of the blue, the governor's announces one without any advance notice at all, even to our health director. I mean, that's an incredible event. And, you know, that would happen a lot more often if it was just state controlled and regionally directed. So I think we should express our concern, but without expressing detailed pro or cons at this point.
Other comments about what as a council we should bring forward on this particular legislation?
Lindsay, can you take a no official position, but also sort of, I thought that's what, I could be remembering wrong. Your initial beginning was that we don't take an official position, but that we do articulate concerns.
Right. And so I think at this point, all of the concerns that I have heard are the same concerns that will be expressed through WASAC. None of those are unique to Clark County. And so I think at this point, what I would communicate, what I'm hearing is that I will communicate to Josh that we have no official position. We have concerns. We share the concerns that WASAC has. He can communicate that with our legislators. And then we can continue to monitor this, and as it evolves, we can, you know, decide whether to take a more formal public opposition or a support position.
Okay.
So the next two pieces of legislation.
I just saw Councilor Meviji was speaking, but he was muted.
I'm sorry. So as stated by Lindsay, I support that exactly. And I threw the question back to Councilor Olson if she thought that was okay, or if you had further input.
Yes. No, that's exactly, I totally support that position. Yeah. Thank you.
So the next two bills that I want to discuss are House Bill 1099 and House Bill 1117. These are two Growth Management Act bills, and they're similar to what we've seen before. One adds salmon recovery as a consideration of the GMA, and the other one adds climate change mitigation as a consideration for the GMA. So I don't know if these are two that you want to take an opinion on at this point. They are having hearings, but we, again, certainly don't need to take a formal position at this point. I will note that both of these bills do contain provisions at this point that if these requirements are added, that there would need to be state funding to pay for counties to add them. The other piece that I will note is that Clark County is one of the few that's going to be significantly affected by this. The Puget Sound counties, there's the 10 major counties that do GMA planning, most of which, of course, are the Puget Sound, and they already do most of this planning through the Puget Sound Regional Council. So Spokane, Clark, Benton, Franklin, those are the counties that are going to be primarily affected by this because we don't currently do this work.
Mike, what's the council's feeling? I can tell you mine, but I'll hear from other councilors first.
Madam Chair, my general view on this is I really wish the legislature would take up some streamlining and reform of the existing process from the hearing boards and some of the other issues that have popped up over the years, instead of adding to what is already a very detailed and cumbersome process, especially some of the, I don't have a specific objection to the salmon piece, only because I think most of the fish recovery portfolio throughout the state is of great importance, and there have been views that have drawn back what they were proposing originally to add to the GMA. I mean, but overall, I just wish they would streamline, create better efficiencies instead of adding, especially the environmental impacts will be such an overarching layer to the already years in the making process. I just wish they would take a different approach to this. So that's my general concern.
Other comments? I would agree with that. I wish they would take up some other issues with the GMA rather than adding yet another layer to prohibit or complicate our land use laws. That's my position. So basically, I'm against it. Other comments?
Okay, I will let Josh know about that. The last bill that I wanted to bring up is Senate Bill 5221. There's also a House companion. The House companion is actually prime sponsored by Representative Vick. This is an issue that, for those of you who've been on the council for a couple of years, we've done before. It's detached ADUs in the rural area. So you'll recall that under the GMA density qualifications, if it's attached, it doesn't trigger the density counting criteria. If it's detached, it does have an implication for density. So what this would do is basically say that detached ADUs are allowed, subject to the county allowing them. We could continue to not allow them if we wanted to, but it would allow them to be considered and not be considered as part of that density calculation. So didn't know if you wanted to take a position in support of that. The council has historically been supportive of this policy. This actually is coming from Kittitas County. The original idea for the bill is coming from Kittitas.
Be very supportive of it.
Yeah.
Other comments?
Yes.
Good. Others? Hello? Okay. I see a nodding head.
Yes.
Yep, I've got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last topic I want to just bring up for your consideration is state of the county. So we currently don't have anything planned. I think it's safe to say that if we were to do one in the first quarter of this year, it would need to be a virtual event. So if you're interested in that, let me know. At this point, like I said, we don't have anything planned, but we can certainly do something if there's interest in doing that. That's all I have.
And Chair, just to add on to that as well, I talked to Johnny a little while ago, and I think some jurisdictions are, it might be just a chair that's doing a recorded event that could be sent out or posted online. And so if the council does want to move forward with that, there are options on how or if you want to do that.
Okay. Take input from the council. I certainly don't think we need to do, I mean, how can we really do any event like we have in the past, but at all? And there's not much to tell except that hopefully we're moving forward. But what does the council think?
It's such an awful time to do a state of the county in general. I mean, I'd like to make progress on these mass vaccinations and moving through our phases and have and get through the inauguration today and have the nation settle down before we approach this.
I suppose as part of, the state of the county, we could say what we're looking, what's happened this past year, which everybody's very well aware of, and what we're hoping for in the future. But I wonder if anybody is really even listening, and if they're interested. That maybe doesn't sound fair, but other comments.
I think that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think that people are listening and that they do want to hear from their leaders, and that there's been a dearth of that over the last number of months. I would be supportive of Johnny working on something and having it go out as a short recorded video.
From the chair.
Sure. Sure.
I think something, the timing on that could be decided, but given, the circumstance that we're in, I think a recorded, if the chair's up for it, would be reasonable and I think acceptable, and then something at least to communicate to the community.
Yeah, as I said, if it's just kind of what has gone on, what we're looking forward to, with various things of COVID versus the other things that we've done, and what we are hoping and looking forward to and moving toward, something like that is fine. If there's agreement of everybody else, I think we're okay, huh? And timing, I agree. Let's just kind of think about this timing. Normally this happens around March. So maybe there'll be more to tell them about what's going forward by March. So, okay, I see some thumbs up. Okay. So maybe Jonah can start working on some things and then add some moving forward issues for March, and kind of, target that time of the year. Okay, is there anything more then from either from you, Lindsay, or from the county manager?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Okay.
Nothing for me either.
Okay. All right, we're going to then go out of this session, this council time, and go into executive session. One pending litigation for 20 minutes, one potential litigation for 10 minutes, and 20 minutes on RCW 4231.10.1G. Okay? We're adjourned. We'll see you on the other side.